podcast of the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift, starting in Paris on the 24th of July, finishing on the 31st of July. 8 stages in total, and we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the race to learn about the stages, the key riders to watch, a little bit about the sponsors who are backing the race, and a little bit about the history. And why not kick things off with a chat to one of the riders who rode in the Tour de France Féminin in 1985, two-time Olympian Maria Blower. Maria, thank you so much for joining. Can't wait to get to know all what it was like to be in the race.
Oh, hi Hannah. It was really good. It was good fun. It was scary. It was an experience that I'll never forget. It was an unbelievable experience, and I'm so proud and lucky that I got to do it.
And you had some terrific results along the way. You finished 22nd in the overall general classification in 85. You were third on a stage on stage 10 and fourth on stage 3, if I checked the results correctly. What was that like, battling and getting that podium on the stage 10?
It was a bit surreal because the day before I'd been feeling really rather rough. We'd had a mountain stage, and the day that I was third, the circuit was on the men's time trial course. So I was very aggressive back then, so I would attack quite often, and I got in a really good break with some really good riders, and Valérie Simonet, the French rider, she and I knew each other, so we just worked together, and then we had a good ride, and I think I was just third in the sprint.
You were just saying that it was on the men's time trial course. So was the race then run alongside the men's tour? Were the stages very, very similar, or what did that look like? What was the outlook like?
We were off early before the men started, so it would have been like get up really early, have breakfast really early. So I remember just being at the start thinking, it's cold. It wasn't. It was like, you go from finishing up a mountain to the next day waking up the crack of dawn to get some breakfast inside you to get to the start. And it was in a ski resort, I remember. Yeah, and I remember feeling really rubbish at the start, and then once I started riding, I felt I was flying. So it was just bizarre.
And how many stages were there in total? Because looking at the results online and from what I could find, you can't really find the full results of kind of all stages or how many stages there were.
There were 17 stages in total and 4 rest days, but because the regulations were that women weren't allowed to race over 10 days, they broke it into 2 separate races. So they even had separate jerseys for each race, and then they mashed it together for the overall, the yellow jersey in Paris. So they had purple jerseys for the second half. It was like suddenly they said, right, now you're in another race, but we'd only had a day in between to get regulations.
Wow. But I mean, what was that like then? Having, you're only allowed to do a maximum of 10 days. What was that like, although you've got the 4 rest days, to race 17 stages, 17 days? What was that like on the body? Because I guess it's not something you were used to, or any of the peloton were used to.
No, it was, looking back, I can see that the nutrition was rubbish. I know that because because the men's stages are so long and ours were so short, we had to do these massive transfers either before or after. And I don't think that I remember being hungry a lot of the time. I know when I see pictures of me at the finish, I look as light as I've ever been. I don't think we nutritionally looked after ourselves well enough.
You were talking about the length of the stage there, and that some of them were short. What was the longest stage, and what was the shortest stage actually?
The longest stage was, on paper it said 93 kilometres, but in reality they would always tag on these bizarre extra neutralised sections. So we'd have to start, say, in the village where they'd set up the start village, but then in order to get us further up the road to where the men's finish was, we'd ride 10 or 20 kilometres behind the car, and then they'd drop the flag, and then so you never knew exactly how far the race was going to be.
I guess you always had to be attentive to know where the finish line might come. Did you have team cars that you could go back and then go and speak to the sports director or team manager? Or
yeah, we did have team cars, and we had exactly the same Peugeots that the men's team had, which looked really cool, and they were really cool. But I remember quite early on, one of us punctured. I think it was Catherine Swinnerson, and me and Linda Gorner went back for her, and we used the cars to get back on. And in women's racing, was back then kind of normal that countries would help each other. And then when we got to the finish, we got fined like 30 seconds, and we were so like devastated because it plummeted us down the GC, not realising that later on we'd lose minutes. But at that point, losing those 30 seconds was really tragic.
Yeah, quite traumatic. You've made that effort, everything's going to a success, and then to find you've been penalised.
Yeah, we were really indignant about that. We didn't understand it. We wanted to complain and everything. And then when we got to Paris, it was like 30 seconds, we lost minutes, Didn't matter.
What was the infrastructure of the race like? I mean, I guess being in the race, you're so focused on the race ahead and the stages. Do you remember what the whole infrastructure was like in terms of what was the start village like, or the finish village, or the towns, or the crowds? What was it all like?
The start villages would be smaller. It would be a smaller setup because it would always just be us. So it would be the girls on their own. And I mean, I remember one day when we just started literally at the bottom of the mountain. It was like you had to be in your little ring on a little gear to even get your foot in, because it was just like they just wanted us to go up the mountain, down a mountain, and then up another mountain.
Wow.
So that was a short stage, but it was just basically uphill.
Yeah, very physically demanding, and I guess mentally demanding as well.
It was disproportionately hilly, obviously, because the men had these great long lead-ins. We didn't. We were just like, boom, mountain. There was no lead into the mountain. You were just on it.
Would you do a warm-up before you get to that point? Because, of course, now with turbo trainers, rollers, smart turbos, there's that opportunity that you can do a bit of a warm-up, especially before a hard stage like that, or a short stage. You see it, on time trials and what have you. But would you have something like that equipment, or would you just go out for a ride before the stage started?
I think we probably would have ridden from the hotel if we were close enough, and maybe done a little bit, but really, no. And plus, you're so tired. It's hard to, because there was so much travelling before the stage or after the stage. You'd have to then, because we couldn't stay in the same town as the men because they didn't have enough hotels. So they had to get us far enough away from the men to get accommodation. So there was always these fast driving, and we would drive in convoy with all the gendarmes. So it would seem like it was quick, but it was a long way, always.
Yeah, definitely, and especially after you've finished a stage and you're all trying to get on the road. What can you remember sort of what a transfer, or how long a transfer was?
It would always be a couple of hours. It felt like it was always a couple of hours. And because in the team car it felt like crowded, so I remember I would often go in the side wagon with some Chinese girls, and it was just like there was more room in there than there was in the car.
Yeah, important to try and recover as much as possible. I guess it wasn't such a big thing back then. It's not like you've got big buses like the World Tour teams have now, where you have that comfort, that luxury to maximise the recovery.
No buses, no, and nobody was kept giving us food. I think you get stuck in that minivan and you've got no food, and you didn't really. That was it. You got to the hotel.
Like you say, you must have been hungry, and nutrition wasn't such a, I guess, well-known thing then, of how important it was to recover for your riders.
No, not for recovery. No, absolutely not. I mean, my dad had been a professional, so he did take me to see Barry Hoban, who was a British rider who had won stages in Tour de France, and he said to me, he was quite blunt with me. He said you've got no chance in the mountains. He said you've got to be opportunistic, so you've got to take your chances, and that was really good advice. How
important was that knowledge that Barry Hoban had given to you? Of course, as you said, Marie's won stages in the Tour de France, he's won stages in the Vuelta, many victories during his career, but how integral was that knowledge that he passed on to you as a rider?
It was invaluable. Plus my dad had lived in France, and he'd actually turned down an invitation to ride the Tour de France. My dad had ridden the Dauphin, and we had a bike shop, so I did have an advantage that they knew what I was heading in for, even if I didn't. So I did have the right gears. I did have low gears, and because we'd learnt from the girls the year before that they didn't have low enough gears. So I did have good kit, and I did have the best knowledge that was available to me at the time. But looking back, I can see how ill prepared we were. But I did have, and I had extra jerseys made, because at that point we were still using woolly jerseys. And so I had some extra lycra jerseys made, so that I'd got enough jerseys to have, and shorts. The shorts were still woolly back then.
I've got so many questions. First of all, what gearing did you use? Because that would have been vital, that would have been crucial. And you must, well, for those wearing woolen jerseys still and woolen shorts, it must have been boring.
Yeah, it was. You'd see girls with like white salts coming through their woolly jerseys, you know, and the zips were only short as well. We didn't have long zips. You know, we only had short zips.
Wow. But about the gearing, do you remember what gears you rode, Maria?
Yeah, I know I got like a 26. I got like a 26 on the back. But you would have only had like a 42, because we had 52 42s back then. You know, we didn't have those tiny rings. You know, it seemed like they were little gears, but we didn't spin like riders do now. We pushed more.
Definitely, and you can see that in, you know, when you look at old footage and the difference in cadence of the riders, both in, you know, females and males. Like you say, the smaller gearing just wasn't a thing.
No, we didn't twiddle. We pushed.
I mentioned before, Maria, that you had a really successful tour in '85. When you came out of the race, were you satisfied with your performance? Were you thrilled? What were the emotions like when you finished the tour and had some time to let the results settle in and sort of set in your mind?
At that time, I think I was actually disappointed. I was disappointed with my GC. I think I had higher hopes. But then all these little Italians and little French girls that hadn't really shone in other races, because I'd finished third in the Tour of Norway, and I'd had some good results. I'd ridden in Texas. I finished ninth in the Tour of Texas that year. It was a big race beforehand, and I think I expected better of myself in the mountains.
But when you look back on it now, you know, and you look back on your career, how does it make you feel that you were a rider competing in the Tour de France Femmes?
I think I was really, really fortunate. I think I was just really lucky that I got to do it when I did it, because the 85 was the year when we did the full length of the men's tour. I mean, after that, they kept making it smaller and smaller and smaller until they had it at a completely different time. I was just really lucky.
And of course, you didn't ride in '84 because was there a clash with the Olympics?
Yeah, we went out to do the course classic before the Olympics. So, yeah, there was a clash. And actually, when they announced that there was going to be a women's Tour de France, I was 18. And I thought, Christ, if they've taken 3 off to the Olympics and they need 6 for the Tour de France, I stand a chance of getting on the Tour de France team. And that was my goal for '84, was to get on the Tour de France team. And I trained so hard that winter, really trained hard with the lads, and, you know, riding out into Derbyshire from Leicestershire, getting loads of miles in. And then we started the first early races, and I was up there, and then I was winning. And then I had my result in Norway. I was third in Norway, and I was riding stage races and getting breaks, and I had a really good early season there. So then I was selected for the Olympics, which was amazing, because that was the very first Olympics, first time that women had been in the Olympics. So again, I was so lucky to have gone there.
Yeah, a lot of firsts in your career, and you've done some incredible things during your career as well, and some terrific results, and to be a part of that era, of those firsts, you must be proud.
Yeah, I am. I think I was really blessed that, because I went to the first Commonwealth Games as well, which was in 1990. I mean, unbelievable that we didn't get in the Commonwealth Games until 1990. I missed 2 cycles of that I could have gone to ride for England. So, yeah, women's cycling seemed to be really booming at that point, and I was very fortunate to be on that wave.
Absolutely, absolutely. Who won overall when you rode in '85, Maria?
Maria Cannon's won. Yeah, the Italian. She was a lot older. She lived in the mountains in Italy, and she was tiny. But obviously she had incredible endurance, because she was older. She'd had a child, and at that point there was this gulf. A lot of us were very young. I was only 20, so I was probably too young to have ridden it, looking back. It's like you probably wouldn't allow a 20-year-old to do a 3-week stage race.
Wow, incredible. Maria, it's been such a pleasure to get to know your experience of your experience at the Tour de France Femmes, and to hear these wonderful stories and anecdotes. And I think it's important that we know these stories. So yeah, thank you so much for joining on the podcast. It's been a real pleasure. Will you be out at the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift in July?
Yes, I am going out to see the start. Yeah, I'm going out and taking my daughter out, and I'll be there to see them off.
Brilliant. Look forward to seeing you there. It's going to be terrific, and it's wonderful that you can be there at another first, I guess, in the new era of the Tour de France Femmes.
It doesn't feel like it's a first. It feels like it's a continuation.
Brilliant. Maria, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Brilliant. I thoroughly enjoyed hearing Maria Blower's stories, experience, what it was like to be at the Tour de France Femmes. In this part of our preview podcast of the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift, I get to chat to former professional cyclist Iris Slappendal on just how big this is for the development of women's cycling and where she sees the key stages of the route. Iris, for our first section today, I would like to talk about the race overall. I mean, you've seen the development of women's cycling and where we are now. Just how big is this for the development of women's cycling?
Yeah, it's of course, I can't deny it's pretty huge. It's the Tour de France Femmes, and I would say it's finally back. I've been doing a lot of research on the previous editions, like 84, 85, etc., and it's just really exciting to have it back now in 2022.
What do you see as the key stages of the route, Iris? Is there a stage that really stands out to you that you think, wow, this is going to be a decisive moment for the pro peloton? This is where the things could all change within the general classification.
Well, there are a few key stages, but of course the last two stages, 7 and 8, I think they're going to be decisive for the GC, and especially the finish on the Super Planche is going to be really great. So I'm looking forward to that. On the other hand, that also means that the GC is probably going to be decided in the last 2 days, which is also really nice, because in that way, you know, you keep the tension on for all the 8 days. But I do need to mention stage 4, because I think this is going to be a tricky stage where you might not win the GC, but you can lose it. So stage 4 is definitely one to highlight.
Thanks very much, Iris. Hold the thought, because you'll be back very soon at the end of this podcast. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Aisha McGowan from Live Racing Extra. This podcast is brought to you by Live, the cycling brand that puts women first. I've been riding for Live for 4 years, and it has been amazing to ride for a brand that is completely powered by women. They listen to our feedback and are interested in more than our results. They truly care about us and want to help us share our stories and knowledge. Live invests in creating opportunities for women in the cycling industry and achieving parity for women's sports with their support of athletes, teams, races, and podcasts like this one. I love riding and racing the Live Langmar. It's extremely lightweight, stiff, and aero for snappy handling without sacrificing comfort. I'm incredibly confident on this bike. I've also been loving my Live shoes and helmet. Whether you're an absolute beginner or professional like me, Live has bikes, apparel, and gear to suit your needs. Visit live-cycling.com to find out more. And be sure to follow @LiveCycling on Instagram for the helpful and inspirational content.
I'm delighted that our next guest is Kate Varanu of the Zwift Director of Women's Strategy.
Hi, Hannah. Wow, it's so great to be here with you.
Kate, you're now head of Women's Strategy at Zwift. And why did Zwift decide to step in and become the title partner of the Tour de France Femmes?
Yeah, so this goes way back. I think it started with Zwift Academy, and that first year of Zwift Academy was a women's program. In partnership with Canyon SRAM Racing, we decided to create this, groundbreaking opportunity, to introduce a Global Talent ID competition to the world to find the next pro cyclist and kind of create this new pathway to the pros. And we saw such success with that program. It brought a lot of attention to the Women's World Tour. It created new opportunities in women's cycling, and it was just a ton of fun. And we recognized that we had an opportunity at Zwift. We have a virtual world, and we can help create the world of cycling we want to be a part of. So then, that program grew year after year. When we started doing racing in Zwift, we always did equal opportunity, equal prize purse, equal broadcast, equal race distances for men and women, because we can. Why not? It's just the right thing to do. So then the pandemic hits, and we started a conversation with ASO and about the Tour de France, and they had a lot of questions that year 2020 of what was going to happen with the live event. So we partnered on a virtual event in Zwift, a 5-stage men's and women's pro race with the World Tour teams on Zwift. And the cool thing that we did was we continued that equal, prize purse broadcast distances for the Tour de France. And we even switched up the broadcast each day. One day the women would start first, the next day the men would start first, and the broadcast was off the charts in terms of viewership. It did not dip with the women. If anything, it introduced so many people to how great women's racing is. And another thing is that the women's pro peloton, a lot of them have been Zwifting for a long time, and the shorter format on Zwift really suited them. So it was incredibly action-packed racing. The women's Tour de France virtual races were more exciting than the men's. And it just kind of planted the seed. It proved the concept. It kicked off those conversations with ASO about, hey, let's take this outside. It's time. We can work together to make something happen.
That was a huge success. I remember commentating on that virtual Tour de France with Zwift, and it was such a huge success, and the attention that it got, the momentum that grew week by week, and when you saw the variety of winners that we had in the races, who was taking part, it really was, that ball was rolling.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'm so proud of the women because they saw this as an opportunity. The world is watching. They brought it. And that's what, the Women's Pro Peloton does.
This is the first year then that you will be the title sponsor of the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift. What are the aims, Kate, over the coming years for that partnership? Because it's not just a sole one-year partnership that you have agreed to.
No, absolutely not. We are in this for the long term. This is a 4-year partnership. We want to work with the ASO. We want to work with the Women's Pro Peloton to grow the race year after year. So we want to introduce the world to, the power and the beauty of women's racing. It's a wonderful time in women's racing right now. The action's so good. The personalities are so exciting. And, the Tour de France is the world's biggest cycling stage. It can account for up to 70% of annual viewership each year for cycling. And the women have not really had, that space, that audience. So we believe that this race is going to become the premier race of the Women's World Tour, that it's going to draw new fans, new sponsors, and it's going to help the sustainability of women's cycling around the world and across, a lot of levels. It's just going to, elevate the sport.
It certainly is, isn't it? And it's just going to open doors to those who might never have watched cycling before.
Exactly.
They might know the men's Tour de France. And I think this is the big talking point that a lot of riders are saying, they always get asked, from general public, from people who ask what they do. Yeah, I'm a professional cyclist. Oh,
have you ridden the Tour de France?
Have you ridden the Tour de France? Oh, no, there's no women's Tour de France. And now they can say, yes, I can. Or in the future, that is one of my goals. And I think that's a huge goal, motivation. It's a huge turning point in women's sport.
Yeah, honestly, it gives me chills to think about little girls, little boys watching the race and everybody being able to dream about lining up. Just the idea that it really hasn't happened at this scale before is kind of astounding, with the race being on for so long. So it is about time. We have a really fun campaign around this called New Rules, and it's about like kind of pivoting and turning towards like a bright, inclusive future of cycling. Cycling has been done the same way for a long time. It's been a bit male dominated. We all know this. And the new rules say that, women are going to be at the start, and they are going to bring, some incredibly fierce, exciting, aggressive, beautiful racing that I think, any cycling fan will enjoy.
It's going to be such a thrill. I really can't wait. And I guess the question that people are thinking or asking is, what is in place to ensure that this becomes a sustainable event? What has Zwift got in its plans to make sure that it is sustainable?
Well, it's working with ASO to ensure that the broadcast, there's going to be 2.5 hours a day of coverage. It's going to be, very easy to be seen across the world. So that's the number one thing. It's just, make it visible. We're putting in the same resources that go into the men's race. So all of the pomp and circumstance, all of the iconic elements of the tour will be there. I think even setting the race up to start on the final day of the men's is just the most incredible leverage and the best way to launch the race off of the heels of the men, when everybody that Monday after the tour, it's like, what do I do? And now you have this incredible race to tune in. Yes. So, and I think, one of the things I also love is the course. The 8 stages are going to be action-packed. It's a really wonderful course to really showcase the depth of the women's peloton. There could be a different stage winner every day. So you're going to see, some really incredible team racing. You're going to see some really incredible individual performances. I think that it will be just great, great entertainment. And that's a big part of it. And we're working with the other sponsors of the race to promote this as much as possible. I love the ASO partnership with Strava. We're just to make sure that everybody knows this is going on, because it will be great. It will be exciting. It will be incredible to watch. So it's just about making sure everybody tunes in to watch the fun.
I can see the smile on your face, Kate, and just the enthusiasm in your voice. And I know, having spoken to you over the last few months, and it's, the event is getting closer. We can't wait. Just how excited, can you even put into words how excited you are for this edition, the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift, getting underway in the Champs-Élysées on the 24th of July?
I'm going to have to compose myself. I'll be doing some breathing exercises, leading through that first stage. I mean, something about, I've been there for the men's tour. I used to take people to the men's tour in bike tours, and just to see people, to see those massive crowds and the just the energy around it, and to know that they're all going to be tuned in and watching, the women's world tour race, that iconic route. It's just going to be completely overwhelming and thrilling. And, it feels like it's a kind of a dream to help make this, happen. And just very, very grateful for everybody at Zwift, even Eric Min, our CEO, who loves women's racing. This wouldn't happen without him. There's so many advocates and allies that, have come together to create this moment. And the women deserve it, and it's going to deliver. I think it's going to be an incredible first stage, especially starting at the Eiffel Tower, finishing on the Champs. I mean, forget it.
It's going to be incredible, isn't it? And I think, your drive, your passion, your hard work, along with your team and everybody at Zwift and everyone who has had a part in making this happen, really it's a historic moment. It's going to be very, very special.
It is.
What's going to be your role sort of on that first day? What does that first day look like for you, Kate?
Oh, it's going to be super fun. So we'll have a wonderful expo space in the fan zone near the Arc de Triomphe. That's going to be really cool. So just a beautiful Zwift presence. And then it's going to be about, just watching the race, being there, representing Zwift. And then this is just going to take my breath away, but I actually get to be a part of the podium celebration that first
Wow.
stage in Paris. And that is the honor of a lifetime. And I really, it's going to be holding back tears.
Can almost like get emotional myself. It's going to be such a huge momentous moment, and I think that hard work and the constant drive that you've had to elevate the women's pro peloton and women's cycling in general, along with Zwift and your team, and it's not just going to be you either that will be presenting an award. I hear here we have another special guest that will be on the podium also.
Yes. So we have, for the 8 stages, we get to present every day. We have there's going to be a Zwift medal for the stage winner, and we are going to be very excited to invite Marianne Martin, the winner of the 1984 Tour de France Feminine, to join us for one of the stages. I think that paying tribute and honoring the women that came before this. I also think about the women that put on the course and how much effort and energy went into that. And it's really, there's so many people that got us to this point. And, Marianne being an American and Zwift being an American company, it just is, it just makes sense to really involve her in, the celebration at some point.
Brilliant. Kate, thank you so much for your insight. I cannot wait for the 24th of July when the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift gets underway and we see this fantastic race. On our screens, you can watch it everywhere. We can follow it online, follow with the hashtags on the media. It's going to be such a brilliant, brilliant week. 8 days of racing.
Yep.
I can't wait. Kate, thank you so much for all your input and hard work.
Thank you. What a pleasure. Everybody watch the Femmes July 24th.
Liv are the sponsor of the white Young Riders jersey at the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift. And now we're going to hear the thoughts of Cassandra Spring from Liv's Global Marketing and how excited Liv are to be involved in this year's race. Cassandra, thanks so much for joining the podcast. It's great to have you on board.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Hannah.
Cassandra, Liv are synonymous with women's cycling, but why the focus on the Young Riders' white jersey at the Tour de France Femmes as a title sponsor?
Since Liv was founded, our goal has always been to help advance women's participation in cycling. So sponsoring the inaugural Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift and the white jersey was a natural extension of our mission. As a company, we really support women at every level of cycling in every discipline around the world. And sponsoring the best young rider in the Tour is super meaningful to us because we want to see women succeed in cycling at all levels and realizing their full potential on a bike. We think the white jersey symbolizes this, and we're really honored to be part of this historic event.
What are your hopes of this competition then? What are your hopes and Liv's hopes of the white jersey, the Liv Young Riders jersey?
We hope the inaugural Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift continues to elevate women in our sport and that we can grow the sport to become more diverse and inclusive. Giving women the chance to compete in the most prestigious race in road cycling, it shows girls, young girls, all girls, that they too can achieve their dreams and aspire to compete at the highest level. And that's something that, we've been committed to since the beginning at Liv.
I'm sure there's been months and months of planning behind the scenes, all for this big moment that will get underway on the 24th of July in Paris for the start of the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift. What will Liv be doing to drive viewers, fans, the engagement in the race and in the sport?
We have been doing a lot of planning, and as event partners, we certainly are, intentional about our message about this being an important part and signal for the future, for a more inclusive future. We look forward to having Bonnie Tu, the Liv founder and our Giant Group chairperson, a global pioneer in women's cycling. She'll be at the race, and she'll be able to present the award to the best young rider at the conclusion of the first stage. So that's really exciting. We also will be, she'll be riding a pro-am event during stage 4. But when we think about our worldwide community, we really think about getting people to watch the race wherever they are. And so, it's really important to us that people know that this is happening, and if they can't be there in France, to really join in. And so we're really looking for ways to encourage people to have watch parties. We're working with our retailer networks to promote the Tour de France Femmes itself, and to really bring women into those retail spaces for a community viewing experience.
And that's great, isn't it? If you can build that community and have lots of people who might know the sport very well, who might be very new to it, and have a watch party in one of your retail spaces, it also creates such a wider community, and everyone can enjoy it all together.
Absolutely. And truly, we've heard time and again, for people to really envision themselves and in their fullest potential, to see it is, giving you the opportunity to be it. So can we get a wide audience, a worldwide audience watching the tour? And so that's something that, we've really focused on here on the Live team. I know that we're talking about it a lot with our friends at Zwift, with Kate, and also with our friends at the ASO. So very excited about the potential.
What does the future look like for the Young Riders jersey, that white jersey as with the title sponsor as Live? How many years is that agreement?
We're planning on 4 years right now, and I hope that lasts long into the future. I'm so excited about it. I'm so excited to see how this continued to build momentum that we're seeing not only in our sport, but also, just globally, for more representation and equality and even equity, in competitive sports at the professional and highest levels.
I can hear in your voice just how excited you are for such a momentous moment in women's cycling, in cycling in general. The women's sport is going to be such a huge moment. Will you be there, Cassandra, on the 24th of July in Paris?
You better believe it. I am so excited. I cannot wait. I am like grinning ear to ear right now thinking about it. And to be able to, be there also with Bonnie too is really important and meaningful to me, but also just to see all of these riders and all of these, people that are really forces in the cycling world come together in support of this. I just couldn't even be more excited. I'm thrilled and looking forward to it.
Yeah, likewise. Me too. Can't wait for the race to get underway. Look forward to seeing you in France, meet you in person, and just thank you to you and to Liv for your support of women's cycling and the support for this jersey and the Pro Peloton. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. It's absolutely our pleasure. And also thank you to Vox Women for your role in really, raising more awareness and telling more stories of women. Those spotlights are so important. And I look forward to all of the work and all of the things that we'll get to do together in the future.
That's very kind, Cassandra. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Iris, now let's put you on the spot. Who's going to win the yellow jersey?
Yeah, thanks for putting me on the spot. But there's just one name that pops in my head, and I think is probably for most of the cycling fans. So I'm not gonna like do a really surprising prediction here, as I'm gonna go with Annemiek van Vleuten for the yellow jersey. But if there will be any surprises, I'll be really, really stoked to see that.
And the white jersey, the Young Riders jersey?
I'll pick Fisher Black. And she's one of the most exciting talents that we have at the moment, especially uphill. And I think, I think she could even be together with Vollering, could be a contender for the podium. And I'm sure they're not going to make it easy for Annemiek van Vleuten to take that yellow jersey. So I'm going to go with Fisher Black for white.
So Niamh Fisher Black for the Young Riders white jersey. What about the Queen of the Mountains jersey then? Because that could be also really hotly contested. We've seen just how much there's been a battle with some riders in previous races for this kind of jersey.
True. I haven't checked the points system completely, so I guess there's a big chance with the uphill finishes as well that the QOM is going to be taken also with the rider who takes the yellow jersey. But if I forget about that for a second, then my hope is on Veronica Ewers of EF Education, which is also one of these like really exciting riders who's doing a really strong season at the moment, and a great climber. So it would be cool if she could take that jersey.
It certainly would. And the final jersey of the four, the green points jersey, who do you think is going to take the points jersey come the end of July?
Can I not name two names? Because I'm really doubting this.
Why not?
one.
Yeah, go for it.
Because I think Wiebes, of course, I think she's gonna take it first day immediately on the Champs-Élysées. She's gonna like put on a masterly sprint there. But I've also got Balsamo in my mind, especially on a more, because she's such a rider that can handle a lot of different terrains, even more so than Wiebes. So I think she's also able to take points in the other stages, the not typical sprint stages, like stage 4, for example. So if I need to choose, I'll pick Balsamo.
Okay, so Iris's predictions for the jerseys of the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift. We have the yellow jersey in Annemiek van Vleuten, the white jersey on the shoulders of Niamh Fisher-Black, the Queen of the Mountains in Veronica Ewers, and the points jersey going to Elisa Balsamo. Aside from those winners, Iris, who is going to be the revelation of the Tour, do you think? Who's going to be the revelation of the race?
Well, in preparation of this podcast, I've created a list of names of riders that are not just for GC or sprints, but I'm just exciting to see. But that list turned out to be pretty long. It's about 50 names, so I need to pick one here. And I would go for Olivia Barril, a Canadian rider that's been also doing really well in the last few months. Actually, this season she's just super strong, racing for the Italian Valcar team, which is anyway a team I really enjoy the way they race, etc. So yeah, I think she's also this really versatile rider that can climb really well, that has a pretty good finish, etc. So yeah, Barril is a rider that I'm looking forward to, surprise us all at the Tour de France Femmes.
She is an incredibly exciting talent coming through, isn't she? And it's been brilliant to see her progression, growth and development in the last few months, because it has been phenomenal. Since you had 15 names, Iris, I'll give you 4 more riders to pick off that list who we should also watch out for, who might not be in those jerseys, but certainly we should keep an eye on them, who could be, bring a few surprises and also impress us.
Sherry van Alroy is on my list. Again, young rider, incredible season so far. She's also aiming for that young riders jersey in the overall World Tour classification. So and has an amazing racing attitude. Like, she's always there. So I think it's a great name. A lot more experienced rider, but Chapman, the Australian, is a rider I always love to see, and she always is part of breakaway. So for example, for a breakaway day, Chapman is a rider I'm gonna look out for. Kristen Faulkner just did incredible at the Tour de Suisse, so she's gonna be in the mix. And then for the very last one, maybe not a surprising name, but just Marianne Vos. I mean, yeah, she's kind of part of this whole history of the newer La Course Tour de France edition. She's an amazing rider. She's the older, experienced one, but I think she got her eyes on this Tour de France Femmes, so she's gonna take a stage here and there.
Terrific to hear your thoughts, Iris. What else do you think we can expect from the race? 8 days of racing, so much, the variation in terrain, what is possible, so many different stages that could suit many different riders. What else can we expect?
Well, I think it's the interesting thing of stage races is the battle for GC versus the stage victories. So I'm really curious what this dynamic will be, especially with the Giro Donne just before. So you've got riders that will be racing for GC in both of those races. Some will probably focus completely on the Tour, and others will, for example, go for stages in the Giro, but for the overall in the Tour. So I think this is just going to be really already very exciting leading up to the Tour. Like you say, it's the variety in terrain. It's the fact that it's a race on itself is something I really appreciate about this thing. It's not that it's at the same time as the men's Tour de France, but it's really a race, a separate race, but with the same organization, everything around it, the media. So I'm just looking forward to the drama, to the stories, to be there on site, because I'm going to be there every day reporting from the motorbike. So I'm just really excited to be in that race. And especially, like I say, the last two stages, the gravel stage, as I call it, stage 4, the finish on the Super Planche, but also the Grand Ballon. So actually this whole we say Vogezen in the Netherlands, but it's a really nice area, and it's really, I mean, it's not the Alps, but it's a really, really tough terrain. So yeah, I think it's just all together, the mix of terrain, the excitement of the riders. I'm sure they're going to feel that extra pressure from the media attention. The fact that it's such a historic moment, that they're racing there now, so they're all going to feel that extra pressure and excitement. And I think that's going to be that's going to add something extra to this race.
It certainly is. I mean, I cannot wait for this moment. 24th of July can't come soon enough. I'm really looking forward to it, as are you, Iris. As ever, thank you so much for your insights and input, and can't wait to see those predictions come the end of the race.
You're welcome.
Thanks very much.
See you there.
I don't know about you, but I've thoroughly enjoyed getting to chat to so many incredible people about what this year's Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift is going to bring, and also hear the memories, the stories, what it was like back in the 80s from Mandy Jones and Maria Blower, from when they rode the Tour de France Femina. You can learn all about the young riders in the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift this year by listening to the Vox Women Here Comes the Future podcast series. It's available on all podcast platforms. We'll also be producing a daily podcast from the Tour, so why not subscribe now and you'll be notified when the podcast lands. From myself, Hannah Walker, thanks so much for listening. We'll see you on the Tour. Ciao for now.